What if I told you that the fear you feel about death isn't about death at all? What if it's about the life you've been too afraid to fully embrace? Welcome to Buddha's Wisdom Garden, where today we're diving into one of the most profound and liberating teachings of the Buddha, the truth about death, impermanence, and how understanding them can set you free. For most of us, death feels like a looming shadow, something final, absolute, and terrifying. But the Buddha taught something radically different. Death isn't the end. It's part of an ongoing cycle, a doorway to transformation, and a reminder of what truly matters. Think about it. What would change in your life if you no longer feared death? How would you approach your relationships, your dreams, or even your daily choices if you knew that this moment is all we ever truly have? Here's where you come in. I want to hear from you. In the comments, share your thoughts on this. If the fear of death disappeared, how would you live differently? What's one thing you'd do today if you weren't holding back? Let's start this conversation together. And by the end of this journey, you'll see how this timeless wisdom can reshape not only how you see death but how you choose to live. Part 1: The Illusion of Permanence. Impermanence in everyday life. Let's start with something simple, your favorite memory. Maybe it's a moment from your childhood, the time you learned to ride a bike, or laughed uncontrollably with your best friend. Or perhaps it's something recent, like celebrating a big win at work. Think about how vivid and joyful that moment felt. Now think about how quickly it passed. You might have wished you could pause time to hold on to it forever. But it slipped away, didn't it? That's impermanence, or anicca in Buddhism. Life is like sand running through your fingers. No matter how tightly you try to hold on, the grains always fall. This isn't just a poetic notion, it's the truth of existence. Everything you know, from the warmth of a hug to the glow of a sunset, is transient. Scientific perspective on impermanence. Let's take a moment to bridge this idea with science. Did you know that the cells in your body are constantly renewing? Your skin, your blood, even the lining of your stomach is in a perpetual state of regeneration. In fact, most of your cells are completely replaced every 7 to 10 years. Physically speaking, you're not the same person you were a decade ago. Now, let's look at your mind. Think about how your thoughts, beliefs, and personality have evolved. Maybe 10 years ago, you were passionate about a particular hobby, or held strong opinions that no longer define you today. If your body and mind are constantly changing, why do we cling so tightly to the idea of a fixed, permanent self? This resistance to change is like trying to freeze a river mid-flow. It's exhausting, and it's futile. Even the universe itself operates under the law of impermanence. Stars are born, shine brilliantly for billions of years, and eventually collapse into black holes. Nothing is static, not even the cosmos. And yet, we humans struggle to accept this fundamental truth in our daily lives. The story of a wise farmer. Let me tell you a story. One that illustrates the wisdom of accepting impermanence. There was a farmer in a small village who owned a single horse. One day, The horse broke through its fence and ran away. His neighbors rushed over and exclaimed, "What bad luck!" The farmer shrugged and said, "Maybe." The next day, the horse returned, bringing with it 3 wild horses. The neighbors cheered. "What good luck!" Again. The farmer simply said, "Maybe." A week later, the farmer's son tried to tame one of the wild horses, but he was thrown off and broke his leg. The neighbors came by, shaking their heads. "What bad luck," they said. The farmer, calm as ever, replied, "Maybe." A few weeks after that, soldiers came to the village to draft young men for war. Because of his broken leg, the farmer's son was spared. The neighbors came by again, saying, "What good luck!" And the farmer, wise beyond his years, said once more, "Maybe." This story reminds us of a profound truth: life is unpredictable. What we label as good or bad is often temporary and incomplete. That promotion you were ecstatic about might come with stress that eats into your personal life. The breakup you mourned might lead you to a healthier, happier relationship. When we cling to our judgments and expectations, we create suffering. By embracing impermanence, we open ourselves to life's flow, accepting each moment with grace. Relatable historical example. Think about Abraham Lincoln. He's remembered as one of America's greatest leaders. But his life was marked by constant change and hardship. Before becoming president, Lincoln failed in business, lost numerous elections, and endured devastating personal tragedies, including the death of his son. Yet, instead of clinging to despair or labeling his failures as permanent, he adapted. He saw each setback as part of a larger journey. That resilience, born of an understanding of impermanence, allowed him to lead the country through one of its darkest periods, the Civil War. The takeaway: impermanence is not just a Buddhist teaching. It's the way the world works. By recognizing that nothing lasts forever, not pain, not joy, not even our sense of self, we can stop resisting change and start living fully in the present. Like the farmer, we can let go of our need to control outcomes and learn to meet life with an open heart, saying, "Maybe." What would change in your life if you embraced impermanence instead of fearing it? Part 2: The Stream of Consciousness. The nature of self. Let's challenge a common assumption: the idea of a fixed, unchanging self. Who are you? Is the you sitting here now the same person you were 5 years ago? 10 years ago? What about when you were a child? Buddhism teaches us that what we call the self is not a permanent entity. Instead, it's a collection of ever-changing thoughts, emotions, sensations, and experiences. Think of your mind as a stream, a flowing river of consciousness. Each moment connects to the next, but no single drop of water remains the same. This is what the Buddha meant when he said there is no permanent self, only a dynamic process. A relatable example. Imagine someone like Steve Jobs. Early in his life, he was a college dropout with no clear direction. Later, He founded Apple, was fired from his own company, and eventually returned to revolutionize technology. Was the Steve Jobs of his youth the same person as the visionary who unveiled the iPhone? Not really. He evolved, shaped by his experiences, decisions, and the challenges he faced. Like all of us, Jobs was a stream of consciousness, a river constantly changing, yet maintaining continuity. The river metaphor. Now, picture an actual river. It flows endlessly, always moving, even if you stand in the same spot. The water touching your feet one moment is gone the next. The river's identity is its flow, not the individual drops of water. Your consciousness works the same way. It's not a fixed thing, but a process, shaped by your thoughts, actions, and experiences. Just as a river reflects the landscape it passes through, your consciousness reflects the choices you make and the life you live. Scientific connection, neuroplasticity. Modern neuroscience backs this up. The concept of neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to change and adapt, proves that your mind is never static. Every thought, every decision, every habit rewires your brain in small but significant ways. For example, learning a new skill like playing the guitar creates new neural pathways, fundamentally altering how your brain functions. This constant change is a scientific affirmation of the Buddhist view of consciousness. There is no core self etched in stone. Instead, you are a collection of ever-shifting patterns, both mental and physical. The story of Nagasena and the chariot. To illustrate this, let me share a famous Buddhist parable. A king once asked the monk Nagasena, "If there's no self, who is reborn after death?" Nagasena replied with a question of his own. "Your Majesty, how did you arrive here today?" The king answered, "In a chariot." "Ah," said Nagasena. "But what is a chariot? Is it the wheels? The axles? The frame? The seat? Or the horses that pull it? None of these alone is the chariot. Yet together they create what you call a chariot. In the same way, what you call the self is not a single, fixed entity, but a combination of parts working together." The king nodded, understanding for the first time that the self is like the chariot, a collection of interconnected components, not a permanent whole. Consciousness as a flame. The Buddha used another metaphor to explain this concept, a flame. Imagine lighting a candle from another candle. The second flame is born of the first, but it is not the same flame. There's continuity, but no permanence. This is how consciousness flows from one moment to the next. And, according to Buddhism, from one life to the next. A historical example. Consider Mahatma Gandhi. Early in his life, he was a shy lawyer struggling to find his purpose. Later, he became a revolutionary leader, inspiring millions with his philosophy of nonviolence. Gandhi's transformation wasn't a result of a fixed self. It was the outcome of continuous growth and adaptation. His consciousness flowed, shaped by the choices he made and the experiences he embraced. Practical takeaway: observing the stream. Here's something you can try right now. Close your eyes and pay attention to your thoughts. Watch as they arise, shift, and fade. You might notice a worry popping up, followed by a memory, then a random idea. Do you see how none of these thoughts stick? They're like clouds passing through the sky, constantly changing, never permanent. This exercise helps us understand the stream of consciousness. Once you see that your thoughts are temporary, it becomes easier to let go of fear and attachment. After all, if everything is in motion, why cling to what is bound to change? The connection to rebirth. Now, here's where it gets fascinating. If there's no permanent self, what carries on after death? Buddhism teaches that it's the stream of consciousness, shaped by the karma we create. Just like the flame that lights another flame, your current thoughts and actions leave imprints that ripple into the future. Think about it this way. Your kindness today can set off a chain reaction of positivity that outlives you. Likewise, your harmful actions can create ripples that lead to suffering. Recognizing this makes us more mindful of how we live our lives. The takeaway. The stream of consciousness reminds us that we are not fixed beings trapped in static identities. We are rivers, flowing, evolving, and connected to the world around us. When we understand this, we can let go of the need to define ourselves rigidly and embrace the freedom to change and grow. What would your life look like if you saw yourself as a river instead of a rock? How might this understanding change the way you approach your relationships, your work, and your own sense of identity? Part 3, The Wheel of Becoming, Samsara. Understanding karma and samsara. In Buddhism, life and death are not endpoints. They're transitions in an endless cycle known as samsara. This cycle is powered by karma, which isn't about divine judgment or punishment, but about cause and effect. Every thought, word, and action you take creates ripples that influence your future, much like tossing a stone into a pond. Relatable example. Think of karma like planting seeds. If you plant apple seeds, you'll grow an apple tree, not oranges. In the same way, your actions, whether driven by kindness or greed, shape your future experiences. For example, if you consistently nurture compassion, you're planting seeds for a life of connection and joy. On the other hand, selfishness or anger might lead to isolation or regret. The realms of rebirth. Buddhism describes 6 realms of existence, representing the outcomes of our karma. These aren't just literal places. They're also states of mind and patterns of existence we experience in daily life. 1. The God realm, Deva. The God realm is a state of ultimate pleasure and ease. Think of it like being at the top of your game. Wealthy, successful, adored. But even this state isn't permanent. When the good karma that placed you here is exhausted, you're brought back to face the struggles of samsara. Historical example. Imagine Alexander the Great, a man who conquered vast territories and lived a life of grandeur. But despite his power, his life was impermanent. He died at just 32, leaving behind his empire in chaos. Even in the God realm, Impermanence prevails. 2. The human realm, Manusa. The human realm is unique. It's seen as the most auspicious for spiritual growth, because it balances pleasure and suffering. We experience enough hardship to motivate change, but not so much that we're consumed by despair. Relatable perspective. Consider Oprah Winfrey. Born into poverty and facing significant adversity, she used her struggles as fuel for growth. Her life is a testament to the human realm's potential for transformation through self-awareness and effort. 3. The animal realm, Tiriag. This realm is marked by instinct and survival. Animals are often driven by fear and desire, unable to reflect on their existence or seek liberation. In our daily lives, we sometimes slip into this realm when we act out of pure instinct, like reacting with anger or jealousy without thinking. 4. The hungry ghost realm, Preta. The realm of hungry ghosts is a state of insatiable craving. These beings are depicted as having enormous stomachs, but tiny mouths, symbolizing endless desire with no satisfaction. Modern example. Think of someone addicted to wealth or fame, like Howard Hughes. Despite his fortune, Hughes spent his later years in isolation, unable to find peace. His story reflects the hungry ghost realm, a life consumed by unfulfilled desires. 5. The hell realm, Naraka. The hell realm represents intense suffering, often caused by anger or hatred. While it sounds extreme, we all experience moments of this realm when we're consumed by rage or despair. Relatable perspective. Imagine someone stuck in a toxic cycle of resentment, holding on to past wrongs and replaying them over and over. This mental state is hell-like, trapping them in pain. 6. The demigod realm, Asura. This realm is characterized by jealousy and conflict. Demigods are constantly competing and fighting for dominance, driven by their envy of the gods above them. Modern example. Think of high-powered executives locked in cutthroat competition, sacrificing peace and happiness to stay ahead. This relentless striving is the hallmark of the demigod realm. The story of the wheel of becoming. The Buddha once described samsara as a great wheel, constantly turning. At the center of this wheel are 3 animals: a pig, a rooster, and a snake, symbolizing ignorance, greed, and hatred, the forces that keep us bound to the cycle. Each turn of the wheel represents the stages of life, death, and rebirth, driven by karma. It's like being on a carousel that never stops. The only way to step off is by breaking the cycle of craving and ignorance. A tale of karma, the Buddha and the poison arrow. One day, a man approached the Buddha with a deep philosophical question about the nature of rebirth. Instead of answering directly, the Buddha told him a story. Imagine a man struck by a poisoned arrow. Instead of seeking a doctor, he insists on knowing who shot the arrow, what it's made of, and where it came from. Meanwhile, the poison spreads, threatening his life. In the same way, questions about the mechanics of rebirth are less important than addressing the suffering in front of you. The path to liberation lies in removing the arrow, not debating its origins. The Buddha's point, Focus on your actions in the present moment. They shape not only this life but the lives to come. Practical takeaway: shaping your karma. You don't have to believe in literal rebirth to benefit from this teaching. The idea that your actions create ripples applies just as much to this life. Every decision you make plants seeds for your future self. Practical exercise. Each night, reflect on your day. Ask yourself, did I plant seeds of kindness or negativity today? What can I do differently tomorrow? This simple practice helps you take ownership of your karma and steer your life toward growth and peace. The takeaway: the wheel of samsara reminds us that life is a series of interconnected choices. By understanding the realms of existence and the role of karma, we can live more mindfully, planting seeds that lead to liberation rather than suffering. What choices will you make today to create a brighter future for yourself and others? Part 4: Liberation through Nirvana. Demystifying Nirvana. Nirvana. It's a word that's often misunderstood. In popular culture, it's painted as a kind of paradise, a blissful escape from the struggles of life. But in Buddhism, Nirvana isn't a place. It's a state of being. It's the ultimate freedom, the extinguishing of the flames of craving, ignorance, and hatred that keep us trapped in the cycle of samsara. Think of it as finally stepping off the wheel of becoming. You're no longer bound by the endless cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. But more than that, Nirvana is the freedom to live without the chains of attachment and fear. The flame extinguished. The Buddha described Nirvana using a simple yet profound metaphor. A flame. Imagine a candle burning in the wind. The flame flickers and dances, fueled by the wax and the air around it. When the wax runs out or the wind dies down, the flame is extinguished. This isn't destruction. It's liberation. The energy that once fed the flame is now free. Relatable example: letting go in modern life. Think about someone like Nelson Mandela. For 27 years, he was imprisoned under the harshest conditions. Yet, when he was finally released, he didn't carry hatred or resentment toward his captors. Instead, he chose forgiveness and reconciliation. Mandela's ability to let go of anger and embrace freedom of the mind is a modern reflection of the liberation Nirvana offers. The path to liberation. So, how do we get there? The Buddha outlined a practical guide called the Noble Eightfold Path. A roadmap to living ethically, mindfully, and wisely. Let's break it down. 1. Right view. Understand that life is impermanent, and that suffering arises from craving. This perspective is the foundation of liberation. Example: think of the musician John Lennon, who once said, "Life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans." Recognizing impermanence helps us live in the moment, instead of clinging to what we can't control. 2. Right intention. Commit to kindness, compassion, and non-harm. This isn't about perfection. It's about setting the right direction. Practical insight. Reflect on your daily motivations. Are you driven by fear or greed? Or are you acting out of love and generosity? Shifting your intention can transform your life. 3. Right speech. Speak truthfully and kindly. Words have immense power. They can build bridges or burn them. Relatable perspective. Think about Martin Luther King Jr. His words inspired a generation to fight for equality and justice. Right speech doesn't just change lives. It can change history. 4. Right action. Live ethically. Avoid harming others. And choose actions that promote well-being. Example. Jane Goodall dedicated her life to protecting chimpanzees and the environment. Her actions embody the Buddhist principle of living in harmony with all beings. 5. Right livelihood. Earn your living in a way that doesn't cause harm. This could mean avoiding industries that exploit others or damage the planet. Modern example. Patagonia founder Yvon Chouinard built a company that prioritizes sustainability and social responsibility, proving that business can be a force for good. 6. Right effort. Cultivate positive habits and let go of harmful ones. Liberation requires consistent effort. Practical tip. Start small. Replace one harmful habit, like negative self-talk, with something positive, like daily gratitude. Over time, these small efforts add up. 7. Right mindfulness. Be fully present in the moment. This is the heart of Buddhist practice. Exercise. Try mindful breathing. Take a deep breath in, noticing the sensation of air entering your lungs. Exhale slowly, feeling your body relax. This simple practice grounds you in the present. 8. Right concentration. Focus your mind through meditation. This isn't just about relaxation. It's about training your mind to see reality clearly. Example. The Dalai Lama's lifelong meditation practice has helped him cultivate profound wisdom and compassion, even in the face of adversity. The story of the lotus. To understand Nirvana, consider the story of the lotus flower. The lotus grows in muddy water, yet it rises above the surface to bloom in pristine beauty. In the same way, we live in the mud of craving and ignorance. But through the Noble Eightfold Path, we can rise above it and find liberation. Practical connection to modern life. You don't need to be a monk to walk this path. Every choice you make, what you say, how you act, how you treat yourself and others, moves you closer to or further from liberation. Daily practice. Start by integrating mindfulness into your routine. When you eat, take a moment to truly savor the taste and texture of your food. When you speak, pause to consider whether your words are kind and true. These small steps bring the principles of the path into your daily life. A tale of letting go. One of the most inspiring stories about liberation is that of Siddhartha Gautama himself, the Buddha. Before his enlightenment, he was a prince surrounded by luxury. But he realized that no amount of wealth or pleasure could protect him from suffering. By letting go of his attachments, he found freedom, not in escaping the world, but in understanding it. The takeaway. Nirvana isn't about reaching a far-off paradise. It's about transforming your relationship with the present moment. By letting go of craving and ignorance, you step into a state of profound peace and clarity. A liberation that's available to anyone. Here and now. What's one thing you can let go of today to move closer to freedom? Part 5. Living without fear of death. Transforming our relationship with death. Death. It's the one certainty we all face. Yet it's surrounded by fear, denial, and misunderstanding. Buddhism teaches us to see death not as an enemy, but as a teacher, a natural part of the cycle of existence. By reframing our relationship with death, we can live more fully, without the shadow of fear holding us back. A relatable example, facing mortality. Consider Steve Jobs, co-founder of Apple, who once said, "Remembering that you are going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. You are already naked. There is no reason not to follow your heart." Jobs didn't just create groundbreaking technology. He lived with an acute awareness of his mortality, especially after being diagnosed with cancer. This awareness didn't paralyze him. It drove him to live with passion and purpose, embracing each day as a gift. The practice of contemplating death. Buddhism offers a practice called Maranasati, or mindfulness of death. This isn't about obsessing over death. It's about using its inevitability as a reminder to live fully. Exercise. Close your eyes and imagine that today is your last day. What would you do differently? What relationships would you mend? What joys would you savor? This isn't a morbid exercise. It's a way to clarify what truly matters. The wisdom of impermanence. When we embrace impermanence, we stop clinging to the illusion that life will last forever. This doesn't make life less meaningful. It makes it more precious. Knowing that our time is limited inspires us to focus on what's truly important. Love, compassion, and connection. Story of the Buddha and the mustard seed. One day, a grieving woman named Kisa Gautami came to the Buddha, holding the body of her dead child. She begged the Buddha to bring him back to life. The Buddha told her, "Bring me a mustard seed from a household where no one has ever died." Desperate, Kisa went from house to house, but she couldn't find a single family untouched by death. Finally, she returned to the Buddha and said, "Now I understand. Death is universal." This story reminds us that death isn't something that happens to other people. It's a shared experience, uniting us all in the fragility of life. The fear of the unknown. One of the reasons we fear death is because it represents the unknown. What happens after we die? Is there an afterlife? A void? Buddhism doesn't offer easy answers, but it does provide a framework for facing these questions with courage and curiosity. The Buddha taught that worrying about what comes next distracts us from what we can control, the present moment. Instead of fearing the unknown, we can focus on living ethically, mindfully, and with compassion, creating a ripple effect of goodness that extends beyond our lives. A historical perspective, Socrates and death. Even outside of Buddhism, Great thinkers have echoed this wisdom. Take Socrates, the ancient Greek philosopher. At his trial, Socrates faced a death sentence. With remarkable calm, he told his accusers, "To fear death is nothing other than to think oneself wise, when one is not. To think one knows what one does not know." Socrates, like the Buddha, understood that fearing death is futile. Instead, he focused on living a virtuous life, knowing that death is simply a transition. The legacy of karma. Buddhism teaches that our actions ripple beyond death through karma. This doesn't mean we live on as our current selves, but rather that the energy we create through kindness, generosity, or harm continues to influence the world. Modern example. Think of someone like Maya Angelou. Her words, her activism, and her compassion have inspired countless people long after her passing. Her life is a reminder that the legacy of our actions can outlast our physical presence. Practical steps for living without fear. 1. Reflect on what matters most. Spend a few minutes each day asking yourself, if I only had a week to live, how would I spend it? Use this clarity to prioritize your time and energy. 2. Focus on the present. When you catch yourself worrying about the future, or dwelling on the past, take a deep breath and bring your attention back to the present. This moment is all we truly have. 3. Cultivate gratitude. Practice gratitude for the small joys in life. A warm meal, a kind word, a beautiful sunset. These moments remind us of the richness of existence. 4. Build your legacy. Think about the impact you want to leave behind. Whether it's through kindness, art, teaching, or simply being a loving presence in someone's life. Focus on creating something that will endure. A tale of acceptance. The Buddha once told his disciples about a man who built a raft to cross a dangerous river. Once he reached the other side, the man debated whether to carry the raft with him or leave it behind. The Buddha explained that the raft had served its purpose. Clinging to it would only weigh him down. Death, like the raft, is part of life's journey. By accepting it, we free ourselves to move forward with lightness and grace. The takeaway. Death isn't the opposite of life. It's a part of it. When we stop fearing death, we stop fearing life itself. We open ourselves to its beauty, its challenges, and its impermanence. Instead of clinging to what we cannot control, we can live with courage, purpose, and an open heart. What would your life look like if you weren't afraid of death? How would it change the way you live today? Here's what the Buddha's teachings on death ultimately remind us. It's not about the end, it's about how we live now. Death, when seen through the lens of wisdom, becomes our greatest teacher, not something to fear, but something that empowers us to let go of what doesn't matter and focus on what does. So now, let's turn this reflection into action. I have a question for you, and I'd love for you to share your answer in the comments. What is one fear, attachment, or worry you're ready to release today? What step can you take right now to live more fully? With more courage and less regret? Your answer could inspire someone else. It might be the spark they need to start their own journey of transformation. So don't hold back, share your thoughts, your insights, and your story. Thank you for being a part of Buddha's Wisdom Garden. Together, we're exploring not just ancient teachings, but ways to apply them to our modern lives. Until next time, may your path be filled with peace, wisdom, and freedom. And remember, this is your journey. The way you live it could change everything. Not just for you, but for the world around you.